When U.S. Marines stormed Iwo Jima on D-Day, February 19, 1945, Corporal Charles Lindbergh, a flamethrower man, landed with the 2nd Battalion, 28th Marines on the left flank under heavy fire.
I was a veteran of Guadalcanal, Bougainville, and these were jungles. But when I come to Iwo Jima, you're fighting in a wide open spot, and you're a target all the time. And it was a vicious fight when someone's in caves and you're on the open. And it was so much worse.
Towering directly over the landing beaches was the ancient volcano Mount Suribachi, high as a 55-story building. From its countless caves, Japanese spotters called in heavy artillery fire from the north on the Marines below. But the Marines finally advanced across Iwo to cut off the mountain. On the morning of the 5th day, Lieutenant Colonel Chandler Johnson formed a 40-man combat patrol from Easy Company to secure Suribachi's crest. Lieutenant Harold Schreier would lead the patrol. Johnson gave him a small flag for the summit.
He said to the leader, Lieutenant Schreier, "Put this flag up if you get to the top of the hill." Captain Dave Severance, who was nearby, said, "I'll never forget what he said. He didn't say when you get to the top, he said if."
Lou Lowry, a veteran Marine cameraman for Leatherneck magazine, volunteered to accompany the patrol. Lowry's busy camera captured the drama of the Schreier Patrol's cautious ascent of Mount Suribachi, a journey being watched by thousands of anxious eyes. Schreier avoided the trail and forged his own path up the volcano's steep face. Amazingly, he found no opposition.
Close to 10:30, we got to the top of that mountain without a shot fired at us, from no opposition whatsoever. And the first thing Schreier says, "Get the flag up."
They asked a guy who would later become a professor of fine arts, Robert Leader at Notre Dame. They asked him to go find the pole. Well, he had to stop what he was doing to go find the first pole. And you know what he was doing? He was doing what every American boy wanted to do on top of Mount Suribachi that day. He was taking a pee, saying, "I proclaim this as property of the United States government." Iwo Jima was Japanese home territory. The mayor of Tokyo was the mayor of Iwo Jima. The emperor handpicked the general to handle the battle for him. It was important that the barbarians not take Iwo Jima. So when Chuck Lindbergh, Lieutenant Schreier, Boots Thomas, Count Hansen, and Jim Michaels put up that first flag, it was an event of historical importance.
Those watching with binoculars cheered spontaneously as the flag appeared. Navy pilot David Conroy was flying his Avenger over Suribachi when it happened. "Hot damn," he radioed the fleet, "our flag's up."
Then things broke loose down below. The troops started to cheer, the ships whistled out, and the ocean started in. That was a moment I'll never forget.
The first flag raising was the one that meant everything to the Marines fighting for that mountain. And Lou Lowry took his time and set that photo up very carefully. A great photo full of heroes.
One who witnessed the first flag raising was Navy Secretary James Forrestal, turning to Marine General Howling Mad Smith. Forrestal predicted the raising of that flag means a Marine Corps for another 500 years. He might have added, if there was any Marine Corps left after Iwo Jima. The men fighting on Iwo Jima were too busy with the battle to enjoy the spectacle of the flag that had been raised to mark the fall of glowering Mount Suribachi. But that flag was very much on the mind of others. Battalion Commander Chandler Johnson grew concerned that some headquarters toady would order the battalion's flag sent back to Washington.
The next thing that happened was that the colonel down on the beach said, we need a bigger flag up there, number one, and number two, I want that flag before someone else gets it, the first flag. He wanted every Marine on that island to see that flag flying on the high ground of Suribachi.
Norman Hatch, the 5th Marine Division photo officer, learned from his boss that a larger flag was going up.
He said, you better get some photographers over there, and I said, right, and I did that, and I got word to Bill Janoust, who was a movie cameraman, and Bob Campbell, my still photographer.
When a die-hard Japanese soldier suddenly burst from a cave at the crest, the ensuing firefight saw leatherneck photographer Lou Lowry smash his cameras as he dove to safety. Starting disgustedly down the mountain, he ran into Joe Rosenthal and Bill Janoust coming up. Associated Press combat photographer Joe Rosenthal was small and myopic, but no one ever questioned his courage under fire.
Lowry told Joe and the others, well, the flag's up already, you guys are a little late. But it's a hell of a view up there, and so they decided to go on up and see what was up there and see what would happen. Joe says, I didn't know what I'd get. There certainly wouldn't be a flag going up. The flag was already up.
And so the first flag enjoyed what was to be a brief glory, while Joe Rosenthal climbed to an unknown destiny and fame. Private First Class Rene Gagnon's company commander sent him to the summit with a load of fresh radio batteries and the replacement flag. Gagnon and 5 other men tied it to a heavy pipe and were fixing to raise it at the same time another group lowered the first. Quickly, the photographers scuttled over the rocks.
Joe's a little guy, and he builds some boulders and puts some old Japanese sandbags on top of the boulders and climbs up. At that moment, Bill Janoust, the motion picture photographer, crosses in front of him.
I'm not in your way, am I, Joe? And I turned and I said, no, that's fine. Hey, there it goes, Bill. Now, I could only hope that it turned out the way that I looked at it through the finder.
A replay of the shot shows how Janoust's motion picture frames exactly match the action frozen by Rosenthal as it happened. Absolute proof that Rosenthal did not stage manage his great photo. In fact, not certain he had captured the moment in his hasty quick shot, Rosenthal gathered the Marines in the vicinity for a group shot around the flagpole, brandishing their weapons.
Every gun on the island went off, every rifle, every ship was tooting and hooting. And the captain yells down the voice room, what's going on down there? I said, Captain, look up, sir. They're raising the flag on Mount Suribachi.
The men who raised the 2 flags at the top of Suribachi had spent 4 days in bloody fighting to work their way from the waterline up to the top of that hill. When they put that flag up, they didn't think of it as anything very significant compared to the fighting they had just done, or compared to where they still had to go in trying to take the rest of the island.
Joe comes down the mountain, heads for the ship, writes his captions. The film goes off to Guam, where it's handled by the pool, along with other pictures that were made that day. The pictures came out of the soup, the developer, and it was immediately recognized that Joe had made an incredible photograph.
America fell in love with this photo. When it first appeared in the New York Sun, 47,000 people wrote in for copies. President Roosevelt printed up 4 million huge posters that they plastered all across the country.
Rosenthal at first believed his first static group shot around the flagpole had been the one published in America. So when asked whether the shot had been posed, his quick "sure" was a mistaken answer. In fact, Rosenthal had had no opportunity to pose the abrupt shot that ignited the spirit of America. He would later state, "Had I posed that shot, I would have ruined it."
The American capture of Mount Suribachi was not at all the end of the battle. It was a great moment on the 23rd of February when both of those flags went up there. But from that point forward, we still had 30 days of terrible combat before the island was ours.
And the heroism of the men at that immortal summit had far to go in the battle. Any exultation over the flags quickly faded. The 28th Marines had paid a stiff price for Suribachi. And now the regiment attacked north into the heart of the Japanese defenses. And the men who had planted the first flag would forever wonder at their quick eclipse.
It just didn't make sense to me that something like that could happen. We went up and we raised the flag. We took the enemy off the top of the mountain. Somebody comes up 4 hours later and puts another flag up, and they're national heroes.
Iwo Jima would exact a frightful toll on the attackers. The Marine riflemen and photographers involved with both flags on Suribachi would pay their share.
Of those 16 men and cameramen, 4 would be wounded and 7 would be killed before the battle ended.
Veteran cameraman Bill Janoust, 38, and still nursing a Saipan wound, would never see his historic footage of the second flag raising. He died trying to rescue a fellow Marine from a cave.
Bill didn't make it. And so in an effort to save a man, he lost his life.
Roosevelt ordered the Rosenthal flag raisers home. Only 3 were still alive: Ira Hayes, Renee Gagnon, and a sorely wounded John Bradley.
They sent my father and 2 of the surviving flag raisers on a bond tour. They raised 50% of the 1946 national budget in 2 months on that bond tour. America was so taken by the image.
I look at a copy of that picture myself. I don't know, almost invariably I see D-Day. I see what it took out of a lot of young men to get to that point.
They were able to get out there and do the impossible. It's hard to define, actually, what will motivate any one given individual to do the things that he does. To go in on these islands and do the job that they were being trained to do. We like to think in the Marine Corps that honor, duty, and country are the things that really count.
It's too bad that somehow in some past generations the word patriotism or have been made a corny expression. And I wish it were not so.
What's important is that Joe's picture was such a compelling photographic icon that it captured the bravery and the heroic behavior of the Marines on Iwo Jima better than any other picture could ever possibly do. It just said that clearly. The teamwork, the valor, the pulling together, getting the job done, those basic American values that were very important in those days.
Lowry's photo was the authentic first raising, but Joe Rosenthal's photo was immortal, one for the ages.
This photograph had such impact that the photo was voted the Pulitzer by acclaim in the same year that it was made.
The Marines commissioned Felix de Weldon to execute the world's largest bronze sculpture of the photograph that had so captured the spirit of the Corps. The monument stands magnificently today in Washington.
The legend that appears on the monument in Washington tells it better than anything. Uncommon valor was a common virtue on Iwo Jima. The picture tells us that, and it does not, unfortunately, tell us about the 7,000 who died and the 21,000 who shed blood on that island. The people who participated in the picture, the photographers, the people who raised the flag, the Marines who took Mount Suribachi, each and every one was a hero of a kind, because that battle in Iwo Jima was the bloodiest battle of the Pacific War.
The heroic stories of the men who chanced to arrive together with guns and cameras at the immortal summit of Mount Suribachi were largely unsung, eclipsed by a photograph and a flag. But not one of those brave men, the living and the fallen, for one moment begrudged undying glory to that flag they fought beneath.